Welcome to the Borgen Podcast, the only English language podcast about fictional Danish politics. On our show, we explore the people, events, and parties that make up the fictional Danish parliament on Borgen. I'm one of your hosts, Amy, coming to you from Istanbul, Turkey. And I am, as always, joined by my good friend and co-host Chantal, who broadcasts from her room with a fabulous view in Toronto, Canada.
Hey, Amy.
Hey.
So today we're going to be talking about season 2 of Borgen, episode 5. And this episode is my episode. And right after this, Amy's going to go into episode 6 and do the summary. And we're going to discuss both episodes. And here we go. So the opening of episode 5, season 2, is there's a focus on climate and the environment. Birgitte, Hans Christensen, and Amir are shooting a commercial that Kasper is directing. And I had in brackets LOL, because I thought, what does Kasper know about directing? Anyways, it is to bring this commercial and this endeavor is to bring awareness to the climate and the environment. Yvonne and Hesselbo are meeting with Birgitte in the PM office, and Yvonne is asking Birgitte to give a break to the farmers so that they can meet her CO2 emission and pesticide requirements. The government is hard at work at the environmental part of the package. The commentators on TV say that Birgitte has the clear majority. She is a bridge builder, and this is a reform package, and she wants all of Parliament behind her. At home at the Newborg residence, Laura comes downstairs and Birgitte asks her if she's packed for camp. Birgitte was previously on her computer watching work-related stuff about the environment, videos and such, and she stops the video when Laura comes downstairs. Laura says she does not want to go to the camp because her friends are not going, and Laura asks her when Philip is leaving for Boston, and Birgitte says in 2 days, and that he's going to come to the house tomorrow for breakfast. Birgitte tells Laura that she's going to the camp and gets on an incoming call on her phone and gestures for Laura to exit and go back upstairs to bed. Amir and Birgitte the next day are walking together, and he said that the Greens policy is almost non-existent in the package. She mentions compromise and tells him that sometimes you need to compromise. Amir tells her that his party declines to support the package. Birgitte and Kasper are later talking, and she tells Kasper that Amir can't understand compromise and that he's not a team player. And for the package, Birgitte is promising that it includes welfare, education, and green growth all in one. Amir won't support it because they're cutting the industry a little slack, and he is from the climate/environment/energy ministry. Kasper calls him a hypocrite because Amir likes vintage cars, and he's had an old Cadillac that has been shipped from Cuba. It's a real gas guzzler, and it's not smart for a climate minister to have. Birgitte wants to know why the press didn't latch on to this, and Kasper said because he's too popular in the press and he's a, quote, media darling. Birgitte is not out to get Amir in any way. She wants him back as a team player. Katrine drops into TV1 and chats with Torben for a few minutes, and he now knows that she's no longer with Express. The next morning, Philip comes over to the house to say goodbye to the kids, and Laura is acting a bit withdrawn and a bit distant. Cecile, Philip's girlfriend, the psychologist, tells Philip that Laura seems stressed and introverted. Birgitte says that she thinks it's being a teenager, and it's hard to figure out that time in someone's life. Philip mentions to Birgitte that he and Cecile are thinking of renting a house on the coast. At Parliament, the media is questioning Amir at a Parliament interview about the Cadillac and putting him on the spot. Hesselbo and Lagerson are also there, and they take the opportunity to talk Amir down to the media. At home, Laura is laying down on the couch and is looking depressed. She is swearing about a hoodie, and she says she does not want to go to camp. Birgitte says she's not going to fight her and says, okay, don't go. Then Birgitte's phone rings and Laura tells her that, quote, that's so like you to answer the phone even when we're talking. At Express, Michael Lagerson is talking in front of a camera. He claims that Express can prove that Amir drove an old vintage car 2,000 kilometers last year and that Amir has burned at least 500 liters of petrol in the last couple of months. Birgitte is watching this on her laptop, and Lagerson calls Amir, quote, a polluter and a big fat liar, which sounds so kindergarten.
It does. It really does. I laughed when I heard that. It was really funny.
Laura is crying the next morning, and Brigitte pays close attention, but is still telling her to go to camp and that she'll pack for her. And she tells Laura to go shower, eat, and Brigitte will drive her to school. The next scene is Lotta, and this is the girlfriend of Kasper, and Kasper in the coffee shop. It's morning time. They're about to get their coffees and things to eat, and Katrine walks in. And Kasper introduces them. And my side note to this is that they look like sisters. Like they look really close together, I think. So Lotta is very sweet and friendly, and she goes to sit down while Kasper waits on the order. This is Kasper's chance to talk privately to Katrine, who is also waiting at the counter for her coffee order. Kasper tells her, why doesn't she join them? He tells Katrine that she looks good and that he really wants to kiss her. Yet previously, in the episode prior to this, he told Katrine he wants to keep distance. He waves in a friendly and innocent way to Lotta, who is waiting at the table from a distance, and she is looking on, and her face seems to read that she can deduce what is going on and has a sense of the type of conversation that just took place between Kasper and Katrine. The scene changes, and next Katrine is going to meet with Hesselbo. He's looking to hire a spin doctor, and he said that he thought of her. She points out that her image as a young modern woman, leftist views can give his party's image a real makeover. And she tells Hesselbo that your party, quote, your party is perceived as a bunch of stuffy old suits. He wants her to be his spokesperson during his election and to go with him to the PM's office, quote, when he wins. And those were his words, when he wins. Over to TV1, where the story of Amir and the Cadillac is making a big splash all over the news. Ulrich and Torben are talking, and they report that the tabloids and newspapers are running tough headlines, and it's a witch hunt against Amir. And again, remember, Amir is the climate and energy minister. Amir has come to see Birgitte in her office and says that this is taking a very big toll on him. He described it as the worst experience of his life, and that the media is all over him and waits for him outside of his home, his summer home, and watches his every move. His kids are bullied because their dad is a, quote, liar. Birgitte tells him that he needs some good PR. And of course, meanwhile, it was Birgitte and Kasper who leaked this news to the media in the beginning of the episode about the gas-guzzling Cadillac. Katrine goes to Hesselbo the next day to accept the job. She tells him she has one concern, quote, how would the Freedom Party fit into a new government? He tells her that they won't be part of a coalition. They're far from ready. He tells her that, quote, our little dance with Svend Age has become too close and cost us voters. I want to distance myself from them. So after that, Katrine goes to lunch with Han, and she tells her the job is 55,000 Danish kroners a month. And Amy, I did the translation because I always like to know how much the salary is. And this is just over $10,000 Canadian a month, or 120 Canadian a year.
Serious? I want that job.
But could we stand working with Michael Augustin? That's the question.
For that kind of money? Yeah.
Oh, plus, Amy, it has benefits. It's got free travel, a car, and a phone. Han listens intently and says without emotion, in a matter-of-fact, serious tone, you're not a liberal. 3 years ago.
It's not for Laugesen. It's for Hesselbo. Laugesen runs the Express still.
Oh, yes. Sorry, my mistake. Yes. This is for the Hesselbo spin doctor job.
Yeah. I would do that. Yeah, I would do it. Mm-hmm. Sign me up.
Kasper comes through the door, and Lotte comes to the door of her apartment, and the first thing he tells her is he's here to grab a shower and go. She's looking really pretty in a nice dress, and she's got a big spread of food out on the table. She's unpacking more food and is setting up for dinner. She has invited her friends over tonight, but Kasper forgot. She tells him that she keeps making sacrifices for him and that she hardly sees him. They get into a screaming match. She's a nice, sweet girl who keeps believing in him, and he disappoints her in every way. Shortly after their fight, they are trying to have sex and it does not go well. They stop. She is still good. She still has good intentions towards him and says that she wants this apartment to feel like home to him. And he gets a call and says it's from Birgitte and he has to go now. The next morning, Amir tells Birgitte that the Green Party is resigning and that it's not up for discussion. He tells her that she has 24 hours to mount a new government and that him and the Green Party will support the reform package, but after that, it's on a case-by-case basis. Birgitte is now considering calling an election because the Greens are resigning, but says to Kasper and Niles that she probably won't because Amir promised not to topple the government, but she knows she has to form a new government now. Birgitte asked to see Hans Christensen, the foreign minister, and Pernille Matson, the finance minister. Pernille says she expects to be compensated ministry-wise. Birgitte says the ministries will be allocated according to party size. She proposes to Pernille to divide the Greens' 4 ministries among her, Hans, and Pernille. Hans tells Birgitte that her insistence on a broad compromise is what caused the Green Party to resign. Birgitte tells Hans that his environmental policy is vague and the key issues are random. Laura gets a call. Laura calls Birgitte's secretary, Jutta, and Jutta tells Laura that her mom is in a meeting and both she and Birgitte have better things to do than to talk on the phone. Goodbye. Hesselbo and Katrine now. Hesselbo gets off the phone and knows that the Green Party will be leaving. He says that the government is falling apart. Katrine tells him to demand an immediate election and to let the voters decide on who should be in. But her and Hesselbo butt heads, and he tells her that Svend is coming to the office. Katrine's understanding that it was that they would keep the Freedom Party away, but Hesselbo does not want to agree in that moment. Hesselbo thinks that he is being tactical, and if Nyborg is going down, they have to act fast. He tells Katrine that they need a majority. Later on, Hesselbo invites Svend and Yvonne to come over and to find out what's going on with the government, and Katrine is also there. Hesselbo tells Svend that Svend's party, the Freedom Party's role, is going to continue to support Hesselbo, the Liberal Party, to which Svend tells him that this comes with a price and that Svend wants more money for pensioners and the underprivileged and the tightening of refugee and immigration laws. Svend and Katrine don't see eye to eye on this, as Svend's view of the world is completely xenophobic, and it is in strong contrast to what Katrine believes in. Hesselbo scolds Katrine in front of Svend and Yvonne and tells her that, quote, quite enough, I'm in charge here. And then Hesselbo apologizes to Svend. As Hesselbo is seeing Yvonne and Svend out, Katrine overhears Svend saying to Hesselbo, quote, put a leash on that frilly, will you? This is Svend talking about Katrine. Hesselbo tells him that he'll handle Katrine. Katrine beats him to it by telling Hesselbo that, quote, this won't work. I'm not cut out to make you PM because I sincerely don't think you should be PM. And she gives him back her badge and office keys and leaves. Birgitte's meeting with Hans Christensen and Pernille is finally finished, and her secretary tells her that Laura has called. Birgitte calls Laura back, but gets the voicemail and leaves a message for Laura to call her back. Birgitte takes off her high heel shoes. She goes to lie down on the couch and she dozes off. Jutta comes in, knocks on the door and tells her that Cecile has picked Laura up from camp and that Birgitte should hurry home. This startles Birgitte, and immediately she goes home to find Cecile in the house watching over Laura, who has fallen asleep in Birgitte's bed. Cecile says that Laura seems to have suffered an anxiety attack at the camp and that her belly ached and she was crying in the bathroom. She was tired and sullen and didn't take part in any activities that day. Birgitte asked why she wasn't contacted, and Cecile said the camp tried to, but Birgitte's secretary said that she was unavailable, and they called Phillip, who is still in Boston, and he gave the camp Cecile's number. Birgitte gives sincere thanks to Cecile for being there for Laura. The next morning, Laura wakes up. Birgitte apologizes for not being there for her or listening. Laura starts sobbing and tells her that, quote, suddenly, I was afraid of everything, afraid of others, of dying. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe and I couldn't get a hold of you. You didn't answer your phone. And she kept telling me you were busy and that you didn't want to talk to me. The next morning at Parliament, Birgitte confronts Jute and she says to Birgitte, quote, "You didn't want to be disturbed. This is the PM's office and not a kindergarten." Birgitte immediately fires Jute and Birgitte tells Niles to find San. Katrine is jogging and runs into Han, and Katrine tells her that she is going back to TV1 to be host of some emotional porn show. Those were Katrine's words. And they both talk about how difficult it is to find jobs, and that Michael Laugesen has bad talked both of them to everyone he knows in the media industry. The next morning, Torben comes to meet Katrine in the studio where she's recording this new emotional reality show, and he offers her a job. It's a maternity leave replacement for 6 months, and it will include some live features for her. And she's interested, but not taking it. She's not taking the job without Torben also hiring Han. Torben is reluctant and walks away. Katrine follows him and says, quote, "Han is the best political reporter in the country." And Torben says, "Fine, bring her in. But it's your responsibility to keep that bitch sober." And this is terrible. Like when I heard that, I mean, I like Torben, but when he says dick comments like this, it just brings him down a few notches to me, you know?
Yeah, it's so obnoxious and it's unprofessional. Like you can't call your colleagues bitches, like not to their faces.
It's not.
That's for inside your head.
Exactly.
It's not for out loud in the world.
So getting on to now towards the end. So Katrine is, of course, very happy with this result. Okay, so next, Amir formally resigns as the leader of the Green Party on live TV, and Birgitte goes to see him. She admits to him that the PM's office leaked the information about his Cadillac, and she tells him that he was not a team player, and she tried to get him back in line and to put some squeeze on him, and she deeply regrets it. She asks him to reconsider his resignation and tells him that he is an extremely skilled politician and his popularity will rise again. And then in the last couple of minutes in the episode, Birgitte is presenting 4 new ministers at a press conference. Hesselbo is being interviewed on TV and says it's arrogant of the PM to not call a general election. And Svend is also interviewed and says negative remarks about Birgitte. Now, the last scene is San waiting in Brigitte's office, and Niles has found her. Birgitte is very happy to see San and warmly greets her with a huge smile. Sorry. And San says she's happy to be back. And Birgitte says, and she asked Birgitte, "Why did you want me back?" And Birgitte says, quote, "I needed to be reminded of when I first took over this office." And that was the end of the episode.
Beginning of this episode, something you didn't mention, I don't think.
What's that?
When they're doing the ad with the tree, and you know, Kasper, and they do the ad with the tree, Kasper's directing it, and everybody's like, "Who plants a tree in January? Like, this is so weird." And then he's like, yeah, it's just symbolic. And somebody on the crew is like, "What do we do with the tree?" And he's like, "Just dump it." And then he drops 2 paper coffee cups on the ground. Yeah. And I'm like, who's okay? And then he calls out Amir for being a hypocrite. And I thought that was pretty funny, actually. I thought that was really funny. I thought it was a funny opener.
Well, that's why in my notes I had put in brackets LOL when I saw him direct.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what does he know about doing this type of thing, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think about this episode? We'll go into a little discussion now about this.
The xenophobia angle is really interesting. I mean, how do we say it? Svendug. It's really, G's are apparently quite soft in Danish. Svendug, Saltum. It might be an A sound. I have to double check. I'll check before. I'll check and get it right. I'm sorry, please. I'm sorry. Danish speakers, I'm so sorry. Okay, so he always coats things in a layer of xenophobia. Like he's this from the Freedom Party, which by the name you can tell is like a right-wing reactionary party. Katrina calls them a protest party, which is pretty much what they are. He's very old school. He always likes to paint people with the same brush, and he features quite a lot in the following episode that I'm going to cover. Mm-hmm. And he actually says a really racist thing. He's like, "Amir gets halal slaughtered by the press." And I was like, dude.
Yeah, it's
you know,
awful.
It's so gross. And then to have Amir be like, I'm too sensitive for this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's like, I completely understand him. I thought it was an interesting angle. I thought that the idea of compromise in politics is really complicated. And that's why I think a lot of voters become disillusioned with voting and with politics, because they feel like nothing ever gets done, because no politician follows exactly what they personally want to see done, which is actually impossible for anybody to do. And then the second thing in this episode that's really interesting for me, because of course, as I've said before on the show, I'm an educator, is Laura's anxiety and the fact that like she tries to reach her mother and this secretary blocks her, which is kind of ridiculous. I'd be horrified if that happened. And that, initially it's so hard for Birgitte to see that Laura is suffering because she writes it off as kind of being teenager problems. And that's really easy to do. Like you can see kids who have bad days or like are act out and you're like, what is wrong with you? Like, are you done being a jerk now? Like, are you ready to like act normal? But you don't actually know what's going on. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. That happened to me. That happened to me in an MUN conference. One of my previous students started kind of arguing with another student. It got out of hand. And I was like, what just happened? And I had to kind of take that student aside and like talk to them. And I found out all this stuff was going on at home and like all this awful stuff was happening. And this poor child's emotions were being written off as a problem by the parents and all this kind of thing. So you never know what's going on behind the surface. You got to like keep in touch with them. And Brigitte is like too busy to keep in touch with Laura and sort of is depending on her to shoulder part of the household burden once Phillip has gone. And that's a lot. That's a lot for Laura to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so happy when she fired the secretary because that is, it
was so unacceptable.
I want someone who can book my meetings and organize my schedule and all the things a secretary would do and more, so much more. Yeah. But when it comes to matters of the heart and head, in terms of being sensitive and empathetic, if you heard a child called you over and over, why are you not interrupting the meeting? Like, yeah. Child calling is an emergency. Your child knows not to call. Your child is not, 5 years old. If she's calling, there has to be a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A bit more responsible.
Even Magnus doesn't call mom, and he's a lot younger.
Exactly. So if this kid is reaching out, it's important, especially since she called so many times. Yeah. So I thought the scene in the coffee shop was again a trash move on Kasper. He's got Katrine there, he's got Lotta there, and he's told Katrine he doesn't want to have any, sort of extra interactions with her, just business in the episode before. Then the coffee shop, he's like, oh, we should get together again or something. And he's saying that with Lotta present. Like, that's just it's so
gross.
So slimy. And you see your girlfriend looking at you and you're just telling your other, your previous lover or whatever, girlfriend, oh, I want to kiss you right now. And it's just like, you can't talk. It's so wrong. So
he's like every loser on Tinder.
Trash one. What's that?
He's like every loser on Tinder.
Anyways, but yeah, again, she deserves such a better guy. She's such a better guy. She's so sweet and she's got good intention. She wants to make a home with him. She wants to involve him more in her life. And he's just like not there for it. He's selfish. He can't compromise. He can't be considerate of her feelings or what she wants. And he only thinks about himself. And this type of person should not be looking for a relationship. You're fooling yourself.
Not before they do the work to improve themselves and their past trauma, which is what we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Mm-hmm. And what else do we want to say anything else about this episode? I thought it was, we made a joke in the beginning to say that, oh my God, that's such a good salary. We want to work for Hasselbo for that money, but I would have done the same thing. Like I can't compromise my morals and integrity for a salary, and sort of that dirty game that you see Hasselbo wanting to play and his disrespect for Katrine in that.
Yeah. And I certainly wouldn't want to work for someone who supported someone who makes comments like, keep that filly under control. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm not a horse, honey.
Yeah. Katrine and Han, they don't have it easy. And I'm glad Katrine, sort of bonded together and said to Torben, I'm not coming unless you hire Han too, because they're both strong, intelligent, skilled journalists. And the men around them, like Svend, are quick to make snide remarks, and telling Haskell that she needs to be leashed. And this sort of misogyny is just gross. So I'm glad they're going to be back together to work together at TV1. So that was a good ending there. Yep. So, all right. I don't have any other points I want to make. Amy, if you want to start going into episode 6.
Yep.
Take it away.
All right, let's do it. So this episode 6. Okay. Now I just want to mention because I mentioned about Kasper needing to do some work on himself. The reason he needs to do that work on himself is quite serious. So if you are a person who has a bit of sensitivity around the topic of child abuse and mental health issues that related to that, you might want to skip this episode from here to the end, because it can be a little rough. I'm not going into great details, but it's not really easy to listen to for certain people. So if that's you, skip to the next one, or don't listen to this one, or whatever you need to do. So this is the second episode in a series of episodes in season 2, where Laura is dealing with this anxiety and the aftermath of this panic attack. Kasper finally reveals his secrets to Katrine, and he is also pushed to his limits because of a proposed bill from Svend Saltum's Freedom Party, to lower the age of criminal responsibility from 12 years of age to 12 from 14. Saltum becomes increasingly adamant after he suffers a beating from a 13-year-old, and he consequently blames immigrant youth for being troublemakers in his typical right-wing reactionary manner. The episode opens with Kasper at his mother's house, which is being prepared for sale. We see him recalling incidents with his abusive father in flashbacks, where the severity of the abuse and its aftermath is slowly revealed. It's interesting to see an episode focus on the abuse of boys by fathers, because naturally we tend to think more often that girls are the victims of adult sexual predators, which is statistically correct. But they're definitely not the only target of sexual predators. So it's important that both of those things, it's an interesting take to look at it this way. And I have more comments to make about that later on. Svend Saltum of the right-wing Freedom Party proposes the criminal consent ages or criminal responsibility is lowered. The bill is coated in a layer of xenophobia. He blames immigrant parents for bringing their kids from far away to roam the streets of Denmark with knives, which is ridiculous. He insists young people who commit crimes are no longer children and should not be treated as such. Kasper is watching this, and it's obviously affecting him. My first thought was he wasn't even allowed to be a child from the age of 8 because of what happened to him. So this bill causes Kasper to become unraveled, actually. After the proposal, Kasper confronts Saltum in the hallways and yells at him that he's a parasite, which is really shocking because Kasper is usually like Mr. Cool. Mm-hmm. He is forced by Birgitte to go and apologize, which brings up memories of the way his father treated him and the lies and manipulation the man used to abuse his son. He can't even vocalize his apology. He is ordered to take this box of candy as a gift to Saltum, and he puts it on his desk and leaves without even speaking. And then the news of Kasper's blow up gets around. Katrine mentions it when she sees him in the hallway, and he snaps at her. And then a bit later, that's when the assault of Saltum takes place, after being out in the city in a neighborhood where it's suggested later that he has no business to be in. So it must be an immigrant heavy neighborhood. I have no idea about the neighborhoods in Copenhagen. Sorry, people. This causes opposition parties to suggest he was looking for trouble and that he might be using his injuries, a broken arm and a sprained foot, to get exposure for his pet issue and for the bill. When he's released from hospital, he works the TV cameras very well, making a bit of a show as he exits. He'll win a sympathy support, according to Kasper, and says Birgitte could come off as being too lenient on young offenders. And I just want to say an aside about the character of Svend Saltum. Like, I think he's really funny and almost oddly likable, like you love to hate him. And I looked up because he's just so awful, right? He's just so awful. But the dialogue, the writing is so good, and he plays it so well. And I looked up a little bit about this actor. His name is Ole Thestrup, I guess. And I think he was really talented. And he passed away in 2018, which I did not know, at the age of 69 from lung cancer. And I didn't know that. And I found very little information on him in English, but I know he got his start in acting in comedy. And it shows, like he's playing up this role. Like you can tell he enjoys playing this like devil's advocate antagonistic character. So I just wanted to make a note of him, like give a little respect to that actor, because I think he was incredible.
Yeah, I think he plays it so well, because I know I love to not like him. I get so mad at him. Right?
Yeah, me too. It's like,
well, yeah. And even the way that the look of him, like the costumes, the way they do his hair and his clothes,
his ugly shoes.
His ugly shoes on the desk. I think there was a part where he had his feet up on. Yeah, he had his feet up on the desk when Kasper came in to give the present, which Birgitte forced him to give a box of chocolates. But no, much respect to him and RAP to him.
Yeah. I hope one day I can find him in his other works out there somewhere. Anyway, Kasper continues to lose his grip. He criticizes Katrine for the hospital interview, saying that, she used to be so brilliant, and what happened? And then she takes that to heart. And Katrina actually does this a lot. In the next interview she has with Saltum on TV1, she goes off script to accommodate Kasper's criticism of her. She does this often with his advice, which shows how much he influences her. They can't seem to stop being involved with each other ever. Torben then also forces Katrina to issue an apology to Svend immediately over the phone, just as Kasper was made to apologize by his boss, but she actually manages to do it. She says sorry. Then the Freedom Party calls for something called an inquiry debate, which is interesting. And I love how TV1 sometimes becomes a device to explain political acts to the audience of Borgen as a show. And that's where I learned about this.
But also to the audience of the TV. The citizens of Denmark, right?
Of Denmark and us as viewers. Yeah.
We get to learn. Yeah.
So an inquiry debate means a bill is presented and debated quickly, and it ends in a vote, and that works in favor of opposition parties because their agenda can actually get passed, and it forces the government to come up with an alternative or a better compromise. Mm-hmm. There's also a debate between Lindekron and Saltum on TV. It's nice and fiery, classic left versus right stuff. His xenophobia is out there again. He has to defend his broken arm because there's a rumor that he's faking it for attention, which is kind of ridiculous. Kasper goes over potential questions with Birgitte, and once again, he's borderline out of control. He raises his voice, he yells, he shouts, he uses inflammatory language, and Birgitte lets it pass as though Kasper is playing Saltum's part, but isn't pleased. It's pretty clear she's not pleased. And the actual debate goes very close to what they practice. In fact, Svend uses some of the phrases that Kasper used. But Birgitte said, in view of his opinions, he doesn't seem fit to take care of a child. And that actually backfires because he lost his child in a drowning accident, which she didn't know about. And now she's forced to go apologize to him. Everybody's going and apologizing to him in this episode. And she ends up stuck in his office for a brief lockdown due to activists entering parliament. He's sort of offering her coffee and cookies, but never sways from his stance. And she ends up shouting at him too, saying he provokes people intentionally and then plays the martyr. And he makes like he's a champion of the working classes, but she's got a point. In the end, in the debate, Birgitte proposes a bill without really fully consulting the Labour coalition partners. In mid-debate in the House, where she borrows a phrase from the desperate, falling apart Kasper, who never reveals his situation to Birgitte, the government will not be responsible for robbing children of their childhoods. And her bill passes by a vote, but Kasper has put his job on the line and he's fired. He ran an unapproved ad. He's drunk in the office one morning after sleeping with another political aide while he still has his girlfriend, while he's still flirting with Katrina. He's out of control. And that actually I have words to say. There'll be a bonus episode after this episode. So if you want a little bit of my analysis on this behavior, you can check that out. He has a box of stuff from his mother's office about his case, from his mother's house about his case. And as he's leaving the office, he tells Katrine that he loves her. And I think at that point, he decides to take her his box of secrets, which he does towards the end of the episode. She is at first intrigued that he's sharing with her. She opens the box. There's a little baby shoe in there. And she's like, oh, how cute. You can tell that's the look on her face. And then she gets to the real contents. There's newspaper clippings and a VHS tape of a broadcast about the abuse story. The boy, Kasper, whose real name was Kenneth, suffered sexual abuse at the hands of his father and his father's friends when he was 8 to 12. And that culminated in Kenneth stabbing his father at the age of 12, which is why Saltum's bill causes such a visceral reaction in Kasper. He would have been considered an adult under that rule, and as such would have lost his childhood twice over at the hands of his abusers and at the hands of the justice system. As it is, he was detained in juvenile detention, and Katrine and Kasper at the end of the episode, at the very end of the episode, in one of the most romantic moments in the whole series, are reunited emotionally in the last scene of the episode. And I actually was there, I found that quite moving.
Yeah.
And yeah, listen to the bonus episode for why this storyline actually affected me in quite a personal way. I know some people who went through something like this. I'll talk to that in the bonus. The second plot line is, of course, dealing with the aftermath of Laura's anxiety from the previous episode. She has to begin to recover. She is in talk therapy, and then she's seeing a psychiatrist who prescribes antidepressants. Birgitte meets with Philip and his new partner, Cecilia, who we know is a pediatrician. They're in favor. They're like, okay, if the doctor says this is what we should do, this is what we should do. Birgitte disagrees, being of the mind that such pills are overprescribed and it may not help deal with the base issue. For once, I think here, she seems to be a bit out of her depth, not because she doesn't care for Laura, but because she may not fully know the extent of Laura's suffering. She asks if the meds are a way for Philip to show loyalty to Cecile, which is a pretty terrible thing to say, actually. He's trying to take the advice of the medical experts he has put in charge of his daughter's mental health. And frankly, what else should he do? What else can he do? Sometimes Birgitte runs her relationships outside of Parliament the way she does inside of Parliament, and that causes conflicts in her personal life. Philip is clearly frustrated. It's interesting that she resists medication as a way to help Laura. It can certainly help, but also, like, I've seen kids have weird reactions to adjusting to medications designed for mental health, like psychoactive medications. So her concerns aren't totally ill-founded either. At this time, it seems actually like it's Philip who's more in touch with what Laura's going through, because in the previous episode, it's Philip who brings Laura's suffering to Brigitte's attention. Despite his attitude to his ex-wife during their divorce and his other very human shortcomings, Philip is an excellent parent. It's not often that we see competent fathers on television shows. They're more often portrayed as inept, especially in comedies, or gruff and out of reach, or at worst, like Kasper's father, the source of evil in the family. Philip is none of these things. He's the primary caregiver to his family in season 1, to his kids. And he and Birgitte do very well in maintaining united co-parenting after their split. He cooks for the kids. He takes them to and from their school and activities. He does homework help and all the rest of it. I like that this example of a father is so three-dimensional in this show. And it's something that I noticed immediately when I first started watching Borgen, actually. And I kind of remembered that as I was watching this episode, and it was really very good. And then Birgitte eventually speaks to the psychiatrist and follows his advice and allows Laura to take these medications, even though it's really difficult for her, and really difficult for her to hear from the psychiatrist that Laura has trouble expressing the full range of feelings to her mother, because she has to be the good daughter supporting her busy mom as who's the prime minister. How do you say no to the prime minister, even when it's your mom? You know? And then Birgitte feels terrible about this. She has her own crying jag about this privately in her bathroom to herself. And that's completely understandable too. I think the worst thing about being a parent is seeing your children suffer. Laura's anxiety seems to be the anxiety of the overachiever, someone who has a lot of responsibility on her. Younger people actually have a lot of pressure on them to perform their best life. School is competitive. So is pursuing university, getting into the right kind of programs, getting into the right kind of careers, and to be a success in everything all the time. Even parents who just say, we want you to be happy, which is something positive, can make kids feel like they're not successful when they aren't happy. Not to mention outside lifestyle pressure put on kids now with social media and all that. But that's not gone into the season because it was kind of made before social media. Well, a little, before the height of it, which seems to be very bad right now, actually. In the end, we see these parallels between Laura and Kasper, one where the abuse and anxiety and trauma comes from outside, and one where, trauma comes from within, in Laura's case. And that's the way this episode went. And the abuse storyline really hit me in kind of a personal place, not because it happened to me, but because I actually know personally quite well 3 different men that kind of thing happened to. And I'll talk about that more in the bonus episode. I'll preserve people's anonymity, of course. But yeah, I'd like to speak about that in our next bonus. Is there anything you'd like to add, Chantal?
Well, we can open up to our discussion now. This episode was packed. I mean, it was very loaded with a lot of personal and professional and government type situations, of course, with the sort of the debate you were talking about with Svend and Birgitte. So let me just go backwards and talk about Birgitte's breakdown in the bathroom. And neither of us are parents to human children, but I agree with you. I see around me parents that I know, including my own mom, and how hard it is to see your kids go through a hard time. And so her breakdown in the bathroom, I thought, was very real. But one of the things I asked myself as I watched this episode, very recently to prepare for the show, this recording, should Birgitte have tried to talk to Laura a bit better?
Yes.
One-on-one. I think that there was a bit of a wall there. Like, why didn't Birgitte, instead of telling her you should go to the camp, pack your bag, let's get going, I'll drive you, why didn't she just sit down and say, okay, I know we're sort of at an impasse here. Like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Is there something that I can do to try and improve? And I think that would have softened the situation. And I'm not saying that Laura should not have been treated by the psychologist, because I am all for that. If someone is going through a challenge in their life, it's important to reach out and get professional advice and, listen to the opinion of other people. But from mother to daughter, I think Birgitte, this is one of her faults. I talk about how much I like her and all that, but this is a fault I'm going to bring up. And that I thought she should have sat down and had a more heart-to-heart discussion with Laura.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. That was a big red flag. Laura's behavior about resisting going to camp, big red flag to me.
Yeah, because it might mean that I just want to stay home and spend more time with you. And Birgitte should have tried to say, well, what can it look like? I know I'm owned by the PM job, but how can I sort of try to fish out some time with my child?
Laura says some interesting things. I'm so fucking ugly. That's what she said. That's what she said. Sorry, people, swearing. She said, I'm so ugly. Those people aren't my friends. The kids who go to camp with her. I don't want to go there. I don't belong anywhere. She's showing all these signs of like feeling extremely psychologically uncomfortable with herself, actually.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to see. And like, I am sure as a parent of teenagers in particular, I mean, this age group I work with, high school students, and they can be completely psycho, to be honest. I mean, okay, not really, but they can be very emotional.
Right.
They're unsure of themselves. They have difficulty expressing themselves. Laura doesn't even know how to express the feelings that she has because she doesn't understand the feelings that she has because she's never had them before.
True. But I think as an adult and as the mom, and also in her PM job, her job is to try and solve problems and make things better. She should have sat down with Laura and had a more heart-to-heart discussion, in my opinion. And that is, like I said, I always talk Birgitte up, but now I'm going to be fair as fair and say this is a fault of hers, in my opinion.
That's why I mentioned about her parliamentary style of dealing with problems being a problem at home. Like you can't, it's not like she can sit down with Hesselbo and go, gee, Hesselbo or Saltum and be like, how are you feeling about this? What are you really telling me?
It's
when you
true.
Say you hate,
Different
when you
style.
hate, what are you really saying to me when you say you hate foreigners? In his case, he really hates them. But for like, Laura is a child, like she doesn't have the tools to deal with this.
To
and
express yourself,
yes, as a parent, you have a responsibility, or as a teacher, even sometimes, because we act in this role. I'm with those kids longer than their parents are, some of them.
Yeah.
It's, your responsibility as an adult, a caring adult in a teenager's life, to be like, you're not behaving the way you usually do. This is a different kind of, this is different. Like, what's going on with you? What's happening? At least try to explain to me what's happening. I can tell that something's wrong. And I think because of the pressure of her job, Birgitte just kind of put Laura's problems off to the side a bit until they reach this like dramatic peak.
Yeah.
And like, it's unpredictable. Everybody makes mistakes in parenting. Kids do not come with instruction manuals. It's the world's hardest job. I don't know how anybody manages to do it properly. I don't even know,
I don't even know, but you're right. I mean, at work, she could delegate, right? Casper, go fix.
Of course.
My minister, go fix this, right? And so this is okay. So I do think this is Brigitte's fault a bit. So I agree with you. Philip is an excellent dad, and I don't think that he was trying to impress Cecile.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
no. And that was a low blow from Birgitte. But I also think she's speaking out of emotion, because she's kind of the situation has kind of ambushed her as well, and she doesn't know how to deal, right?
Yeah, and she feels guilty. It's obvious she feels guilty.
And I agree with you. Philip is the primary caregiver in these kids' life. He always has been. He's always done an excellent job. Amy, I joked with you offline very recently, I think, in one of our messages. And I said, if I wanted to have a baby, I would want Philip to be the dad. Because he's such a good, and I made a joke and said, oh, the genes would be really good.
Yeah. I mean, the actor who plays him was very well cast. Thank you. Yeah.
But putting all fun and jokes,
he's a handsome guy.
If I did want to be a mom, I would want my fellow parent. I would want them to be what Philip has, because I look at him, and again, you talk about the portrayal of men. I'm very proud to see that excellent portrayal of men.
Me too. This episode has a really interesting displays of masculinity, actually, from like Torben, and these two episodes, from Torben calling Hannah home a bitch, to Saltum calling Katrine a filly, and Philip trying to like deal with his daughter and like be nice to his ex-wife, and the way Kasper treats women, and because of the way his father treated him.
Yes, it was
those two things. Those are directly connected.
Absolutely. And you may probably touch upon that a little bit more in the bonus episode, which is going to come out next. But just talking about Anne-Sophie. So when Anne-Sophie Lindencrone, so I know Katrine took a lot of beatings from Torben about, Katrine, get more aggressive on it, or don't focus on this, or don't do this, or you talk blah, blah, blah. So what I liked is Katrine had to kind of be a little more quiet on Torben's orders. But what was brilliant is when Anne-Sophie Lindencrone came in and she was head to head with Svend in that debate, I really rejoiced in that scene, because Katrine was quiet, but Anne-Sophie Lindencrone is saying all the things that Katrine
actually thinks. Yeah, it was perfect. It was really good. Yeah.
It was perfect. So Katrine was just like a fly on the wall, and all the thoughts and all her angles and politics and all that, she wants to say, and Sophie is doing it for her, which I thought was great. And the last thing I'm going to say before, I don't know, maybe we want to wrap this up and get into recording the bonus episode, is that I really like this episode and the portrayal of the men in it. And and I'm glad this storyline with Kasper, which again is so heartbreaking, and
it's horrible.
That scene at the end was very not romantic, but it was very soft and gentle and loving. That scene when
intimate.
It's intimate. That's it. It's intimate. And you're right. When she opened up that box and she saw the shoes, she smiled. I think she thought she was opening up like a present or something,
or like, here's my childhood memories.
My happy memories.
And
my favorite shoes. And then she gets
it's a Pandora's box. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It is a Pandora's box. But what I like about this episode, as hard as it is, I'm so glad they talk about this topic, because I hope other men that are watching this will feel empowered to know that they're not alone, and that there is help and support from your trusted family members or friends or partners or
therapists
or support groups, and that there is help for you. And this is not often portrayed in TV or anywhere else, right? So with that, we'll talk more about that in the bonus episode. Amy, is there anything else you want to say about?
No, I'm good. I think I covered everything that I wanted to say there. Yes, I did. So let's wrap this episode up and move forward to the next one.
Let's wrap this episode up. Okay, we'd like to thank our listeners for joining us on this episode. You can check us out on our website, theborgenpodcast.com, where all of our podcast episodes are archived, and you can learn more information about us and the show. We'd like to thank our good friend, Garth Jensen, for providing our intro and outro music. Thank you very much, Garth. And lastly, don't forget to check us out on all social media platforms. We're there, and we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to connect with us and subscribe to our podcast, and share what's on your mind by using the hashtag #TheBorgenPodcast, or by sending us an email or voice memo at theborgenpodcast@gmail.com.